Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much to KCC for organizing this event and to bring Dr. Meena's work to Kolkata. It's really exciting and interesting for me to be hosting this session, especially after seeing the exhibition with Dr. Meena. So it's a great privilege to be here. I would also like to introduce the guest of today, which is Dr. Madan Meena. Some of you might have seen his paintings, or you would get a chance to see them later after this session. Let me just, as a way of formal introduction, just kind of give his brief bio. Madan Meena is a practicing visual artist and a researcher working extensively with the rural, nomadic, and tribal communities. His personal association with his region and its people led him to choose as his doctoral thesis, Art of the Meena Tribe. Focusing on the women of the Meena tribe, he has documented and exhibited their art of wall painting across the country and abroad. His work on the subject is available in his two published books, Joy of Creativity and Nurturing Walls. As a curator, he designed an exhibition on brooms for the Arna Jharna, the Desert Museum of Rajasthan in Jodhpur. He was also the associate director for the film Jharu Katha or Broom Stories. His interest in folklore studies led him to work on the diverse repertoire of the Tejaji ballad sung across central and southeastern Rajasthan. For this, he was initially supported by a grant from the University of Cambridge under the World Oral Literature Project and published a book, Tejaji Gatha, and its audio DVD. Later, to extend his documentation on the ballad, he received a senior research fellowship from the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Madan is also a recipient of a Sahapedia UNESCO Fellowship to study folklore among the Jogi community of eastern Rajasthan. His curiosity about languages led him to start work on the secret language of the denotified and nomadic tribes. For this, he received a fellowship from the Firebird Foundation for Anthropological Research, USA. For the People's Linguistic Survey of India project, he co-edited one of the volumes, The Languages of Rajasthan. He has conducted various surveys and researches on the nomadic and denotified tribes of North and Western India. Meena ji continually studies languishing craft traditions, the subject which he also teaches as a visiting faculty at some of the design institutes of India. He's a trustee of Bhasha Research and Publication Center, Vadodara, executive member of Kota Heritage Society, and executive board member of Gramin Shiksha Kendra, Savai Madhopur. One of his important responsibilities currently is with the Adivasi Academy in Gujarat, where he has been the honorary director for the last 4 years. Dr. Meena brings his art exhibit, Mapping Cultures, to KCC, and we would be having a conversation about it today. Before I begin, let me say that, as you can see from the bio itself, that Dr. Meena wears several hats. And he's not just an artist, but he's also a documenter, he's an ethnographer, he's a linguist. And these different faculties are also reflected in his art. So let me begin by, asking Dr. Meena to kind of introduce us to his oeuvre of work, to his body of work, and how he brings these different layers of knowledge that he has gathered from different places in Rajasthan, and, different communities, Meenas, the Jats, of whose, the Tejaji ballad he documented, the Sindhis, who are, the block printers of Ajrak, the Chipas in Jaipur. So I would just like to, start with asking Dr. Meena to tell us a little more about his work and how he brings these different, knowledge groups together in his art.
Thank you, Garima, for my introduction. Thanks to KCC, Anamika Trust, Pramilaji, Vishesh, for bringing me here and bringing this exhibition, which is not an easy thing to bring these glass frame paintings, which are here now, you can see them. Yeah, so thanks for that, to bringing me back to Calcutta. I was here 2 months ago, and that was for a different purpose. Going back to my work into different spheres that you talk about, visual tradition, oral traditions, oral histories, craft traditions, community studies. So it has happened chronologically, actually. I have been a student of mathematics, economics, and Later, I switched to painting, and that was because of my interest into visual arts. I studied locally, so you will not find any influence of these uh, art colleges that we see actually when people coming from Broda, coming from Calcutta, Shantiniketan, we see a particular language by looking at their artworks, because it is the philosophy of those institutions becomes so much imprinted that you can understand that the person comes from what background. But I studied locally in Kota, and then for my research, I did from Jaipur, Rajasthan University. So initially it was, I studied fine art. Then for my PhD, I chose a subject of my community women paintings. And the reason was that in the art history that we studied till our graduation, post-graduation, there was no mention of folk arts. There was no mention of tribal arts. And I have seen those arts in my own family. My aunts, my mother, my sisters has been doing it on the walls. But there was no reference, there was no publication, nothing, no mention of such art forms anywhere. So I decided to first research on that. So, and I opted that as a subject of my PhD. And I went around villages to villages, hundreds of villages. I documented research during the period of 5 to 6 years of my PhD. But that journey continued for 20 years. The degree was over in 5-6 years, but that every year during the Diwali festival, I've been into these villages till last few years, when I found that there is nothing much left, because all the mud houses has converted to concrete houses now. Everyone has aspirations to get into the concrete houses. Maintaining the mud houses is a tedious job, and the women are also getting educated. They also do not want to take out time to repair the old houses, because during the monsoon all these houses withers and then they require repair just after the monsoon. It takes 2 months, and I've seen women whose hands bleeds actually. So that's a very hard work. So so finally it is gone actually. So from there my journey starts, and then I moves into researching my own oral history of my own community, what Meenas are, then get into other things also. Just soon after finishing this, my research, I was invited by late Komal Kothari, because he was aspiring to make his museum of brooms, and he wanted the design exactly like the Meena houses. So he called me, he wrote me a letter that please come and help us with this museum. So I straight away went to him, and he said that I just want my museum just like what the Meena house looks, which has different roof levels, which is completely mud, and it has paintings over it. So please help me with this. So he introduced me to his architect who was designing the museum, and from there onward the journey begins. So I was made a curator of that museum. So while curating that exhibition, I went around whole of Rajasthan almost, collecting some 150 varieties of broom from villages, because the challenge was to curate this museum. And this challenge was given by Rustam Barucha, who is from Calcutta only. He was a director of this museum. So Rustam asked me, can you curate this museum? I said, I have no background in curation. I am a painter. But yes, on the basis of the research, I can come out with some solution. So the solution that simply came up was the gender aspect of the broom. The broom has a gender aspect, like Buhara Buhari, Savarna Savandi, Havarna Havandi, Bungra Bungri. So I said, this is something that we can, on this idea, we can curate this museum. So we created one section which is meant for the broom which are used for the outside space, which is a male broom. And the broom which are used for the interior space is a female broom, Buhari. And they do not mix, they do not cross the boundaries. They will not meet each other at all. The outside broom will remain outside and the inner side broom will remain inside. So, so I came up with this idea, and here only I came with the model. I met Rustam in Calcutta. He was in Calcutta and invited me, come with your idea. So I created a small model with a cardboard, and I showed him that the museum design will look like this, but the structure will be like a Meena house. So he said, you are expert in that, you can do what kind of a structure. So we did this whole mud house. So this was done in completely mud. We brought women from different places who could make these bricks, who could layer it with a plaster, and who can paint it also. And that's how the interior unit, the exterior unit, and then there was a broom. We did a audio, video, visual room also, where all the documentation that we did could be showcased over there. So that was a thing, and later on we did a movie also called Jhadu Katha. It is on the YouTube. You can see that. It talks about the whole culture of broom, the economy of broom, which is in crores. And I should say that this whole economy is moderated by the Marwadis. 12 Marwadis living in Guwahati. It is there in the film. The rate of the broom is decided by them because the full jhadu, which is maximum use, the grass comes from northeast. Best quality, and it is all collected by the Marwadis in Guwahati, and then from there it is sent to all the places, and everywhere the Marwadis are there. In Jodhpur, we documented Mr. Modi, who is a broom maker over there, Modi Jhadu. Similarly, in Kota, there's Jain, Rahul Jain, whom we documented. You go anywhere, these are all those people, and Rahul Jain has claimed कि साहब हम मारवाड़ियों के पास में है, इसकी रेट क्या, तो एक समय 100 रुपया झाड़ू रेट हुई थी. So the grass was imported from Thailand. That is also a case. So the economy goes in crores. It's not a small thing, and they say that ये कोई corporate नहीं कर सकता इस काम को. This will always remain a cottage industry. So this economy will be in our own hand. So, yeah. So this was my work with Rupayan, where I got introduced to many communities actually. Many communities from the, you can talk from the Harijans, from the Bhils, from this, our whole the Vishnois, and all sort of communities we came across, and the professional broom maker community, like Bargunda, Bagaria, some Harijan community people, they are the makers of brooms, and some Muslim communities also from UP who has migrated to Rajasthan, they also make these professional brooms. So I think this opened up the whole culture of Rajasthan, and being at Rupayan, you get meeting so many musicians coming in, going abroad, so that exposed me to the whole musical tradition of Rajasthan. But Komalda said one thing to me which I took very seriously. He said, Ki I have worked west of Banas River. Now Banas River is something which divides Rajasthan into two parts. It flows from Mount Abu and merges into Chambal in east of Rajasthan. He said that I have worked in west of Rajasthan but never in the east Rajasthan. So if you work in east Rajasthan, we'll support you. So that is what I was talking to Garima, that my first work was with a Devnarayan Katha. Because in my village, I come from village Narayanpur Tatwada, and there from my birth actually, I have listened these goat. It's a very different kind of a genre of Devnarayan singing, which is sung at the Devras of Bhairuji or the Bagdawats. So I started with that, and later on the subject shifted to Tejaji. I went all around Rajasthan, right from where Tejaji was born in Karnal to Hadutti. That work has been going on into oral traditions. Now, after that, switched to Bhasha. Bhasha just gave me this project that you mentioned, People's Linguistic Survey of India. So that was an exposure to my languages, but my interest in language was the secret language used by the Kanjar community. Kanjar communities who are categorized as ex-criminal tribes. They were listed by the British under this Criminal Tribe Act. Here also, that act was formed here in 1871 by Lord Mayo, the fourth Viceroy of India. That act was signed in Calcutta. But that listed many nomadic communities as a criminal tribe. They were not criminal actually, but they were listed because from the nomadic communities, the Britishers could not collect taxes. They wanted the system to be regularized. The suburbs were the DNTs, and Bodhan suburbs case, everyone knows what happened to him. So that is something that the secret language has been a subject of my interest to study, and then because of working so many subjects, craft becomes your interest, and then I took up textile, particularly printing tradition of textile, because that again relates with the communities. Like the Khatris in Badmer are Hindu Khatris, unlike the Khatris in Kutch. So they brought the whole tradition of Azrak printing from Sindh, and this tradition came only with migration. So the migration happened in 1947. Before that, Azrak was not printed in Badmer. So that I found that very interesting, and similarly, Sanganer printing and so many. So all these things what you see they are layered into my painting. If you see my painting 20 years ago, they were entirely different. You cannot recognize that this is my work. But if you see these paintings now, these are entirely different because the work that has evolved with my research has come into, seeped into these artworks.
Absolutely. Let me now bring focus to some of the exhibits that are displayed here. And particularly a series of exhibits are on Ajrak print, right? Which is also the print brought by the Sindhis, the Khatris, who came from now Pakistan. I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned about nomadic communities, who were criminalized and then denotified. So a lot of these communities that you have documented, whose art and whose textile you bring in your art, were always on the move. They were migrating, their journeys, their memories, the stories that they bring with them, and the areas that they then settle in. You're also mapping them. So I find this interesting contradiction in your work. On the one hand, there is a nomadism to, the communities and the art that they bring with them, which also perhaps changes. You can tell a little bit more about that. Does the Ajrak that was there perhaps originally that you might have seen, and the Ajrak that we see over a period of time in, let's say, Rajasthan or Kutch, you mentioned during our conversation, what are the differences that one sees? So is there a nomadism to print? That's number one. And number two, there's also placemaking. We see in the Chipa painting that you have, the Chipa art, there is a kind of groundedness and rootedness of the community. Or even in the Ajrak, in the maps that you have drawn of your journeys from Kota to Bardmer, we see ponds and we see very local features of flora and fauna. So I think this localization and nomadism, two things I at least found in some of these works. So could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so there are two works here. One is a work which represents Jaipur, the block printing traditions of Jaipur. I mean Bagru and Sagani and Jaipur together. We put three things together. All done by the Hindu Chipas, who are Namdev followers. Those Namdev Chipa we call them. Then the Ajrak tradition is by the Khatris, who are Brahm Kshatriya Khatris. It's a community that has evolved being a Kshatriya, but when Parshuram was killing the Kshatriyas, they said that we are Brahmins, so they became Brahm Kshatriyas. So it's a very distinct community where there's a combination of a Kshatriya and a Brahmin together. Now, when we compare Ajrak with Bagru, suppose, where you say that there's a more rootedness in Bagru prints as compared to more refinement in Ajrak printing. Now, Ajrak printing has evolved from Sindh, and that has influence of Islamic traditions. It is very clear, and this tradition was patronized by the Islamic, or you can say the nobles of the Muslim nobles, you can say. So there the motifs are geometrical, there is no figurative work, there is no vegetative motif, no animal motif or no human motif there. And similarly they are named also. So they are named on objects but not on any living creatures. So that is how Ajrak is entirely different from the prints which are done in Jaipur, Bagru, Sanganer, even Pipad. But one very interesting thing about Bardmer is this, that the Khatris did not only come with the partition, they were there before also. And the whole tradition, a very different tradition existed in Bardmer, and that was similar to what you see in Pipad or what you see in Balotra, which are west of Rajasthan. They were doing similar kind of motifs, and they were there. So that is called, that whole repertoire called Bardmer print, which was meant for Odnis, which was meant for Ghagras, there were Angochas, there were Jajams that they were doing, and there were bedspreads also that they were doing. So that whole tradition got replaced by Ajrak. That happened after partition. So people forget Bardmer prints. By 1990s, there was not a single Khatri printer who was doing this Bardmer print, which definitely had these motifs from flowers, birds, and all these things that completely finished. And when the Khatris from Sindh came, these were also Brahmkshatriya Khatris and they were also Brahmkshatriya Khatris. When they merged, and then the export orders of Bardmer came in. That replaced Ajrak. The Bardmer print was replaced by Ajrak completely. And then it flourished. After 1990s, Ajrak printing flourished. And now if we compare it with Kutch, in Kutch the Muslim Khatris exist almost 8 generations, since they claim that they are there since 8 generations. And if we compare their technique, I have studied both the techniques, how the Khatris in Kutch are doing printing and how they are doing in Badmer. First, the terminology is different and the sequence is also different. So when you go and see my paintings, I have put 15 different steps. So I compared those steps also. So their sequence is little different and the name is entirely different because the Badmer, the terminology is from the Dhati language. And there the language Kutchi language. So Kutchi and Dhati are different. So you have to see this. Similarly, the motifs are moreover similar. What we see in Kutch and what we see in Badmer, because Azrak print motifs are standardized. Like if it is Challa, it's Challa. If it is Ishq page, it is Ishq page. If it's Khidni, it's Khidni. Like that. So they have standardized. But again, the name also differs over there. The motifs are same, but name sometimes differs over there also. So this is a big linguistic difference in both the craft tradition, in practice, in nomenclature, in community also. That is there. Now coming to this Bagru and Sanganer, suppose I have displayed Bagru only. Sanganer I started working now because Sanganer has again a royal textile like Azrak. 2 centers flourished in Jaipur. One was Bagru, another was Sanganer. Sanganer was meant for the royal family and Bagru was meant for the rural communities around Jaipur. And both the cloth were sold in Jaipur market, which was at this Badi Chopad, in the Hard Bazaar, which used to happen on Saturday. So there you see more refinement in Sanganeri prints, and there is a use of malmal, and there are references, historical reference, that is malmal used to go from Bangladesh, and then it was printed, and then it was worn, and then there are miniature paintings also. If you see from Jaipur School of Miniature Painting, it is very clearly depicted that they are wearing Sanganeri prints. Whereas Bagru prints are all meant for the rural communities, and there you will see a very distinct in the designs, and that is the designs represent the communities. Now this is something that we have not studied. For example, everyone knows that the pagadi, the style of pagadi or a safa identifies the community very clearly. Even the shoes identifies the community, and similarly the cloth also identifies the community. So over here the motif which are printed for Ghagra or for Odni, it clearly identifies the woman from which community it is. So this identity thing is very important, that is related with this. And I think I answered your question. Yeah.
So, to come back to the point that you were making about Ajrak and Barmeri print, and how over a period of time, Ajrak as a main, the block printing technique, and also print took over Barmeri, which kind of became extinct. And then we were talking of Bagru and Sanganeri, and I was thinking there's an entire market now throughout the world. And also, we have so many factories around Jaipur as well of this Jaipuri print generically known. Of course, there are differences in terms of Dabu or you were saying Bagru done by Chipas and Sanganeri, right? Now, no one goes into the specificities, right? There's this generic brand that's created and there are so many stores selling it online, offline. Similarly, Barmeri print, the story of it becoming extinct. Do we also link it to a certain, flow of funds, why certain things have become extinct, certain things remain, but they remain not very substantially, but only as a form? Like maybe we buy Jaipuri print, but none of us are wearing the actual Bagru or Sanganeri print, right? So that is interesting. That I'm from Jaipur, and to actually make out the difference between Jaipur or Sanganeri print and Bagru print, or the differences, the names, the colloquial names of those particular motifs on these prints is very difficult for us if we are not researching it, right, as a lay person. So what kind of economic or, let's say, social pressures would do this to art?
So if we go back to 1980s, for example, there's a historical sequence of that also. Brands like Anokhi, Kim Fabrics, these are few people which were brands actually. Earlier cloth was sold with the name of the Chipa, like you can go and see in my prints also, so that was a brand actually. But in 80s, Kim Fabrics came first, then Anokhi came, and then other brands also came, Fab India came later on. So they were not aware and conscious of this ethnic identities, and they didn't care about the ethnic identities, and the reason was that this was not taught in the design institutions. Our design education is all based on the West. That was the major issue, what I see, that why we lost interest in the ethnic textiles or our traditional textiles. The designers were not educated like that, and the market was least serious about these identities. So, for example, if you want a print, whether you do it a block print or you do a screen print, it is okay to them. They just want to compromise on the price. So if you give them an order of 5,000 meters, you can't do it in block print. It is impossible to do 5,000 meters of print in block print, because these brands came with such orders. Earlier, the cloth was printed by the cheaper and brought by himself to and sit in the Hart Bazaar and sell his stock over there, and then he would buy a grey fabric again, go back to his or her house, and then print a new and bring it to the next Hart. That was the market. But now when these brands came with like, I need 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 5,000 meters now, they are getting orders like 5,000 meters. You need hundreds and hundreds of printers, block printers, which can do that kind of a production. So they switch to screen printing. When you switch to screen printing, they lost the morals of printing, actually, I should say. They lost the morals and the values of the textile later on. So everything became very generic, like now these print like Dabu print. Now Dabu print is no such print actually. It is a market word. It is not a word. It's not a traditional word. No cheaper would ever call you कि Dabu print कुछ होता है. It is a market word. Dabu is a process in the whole printing process, and it's a resist process where you apply a block with the mud, the design gets resisted, and then you dye the cloth. So, but now the whole design evolved of a Dabu print, and that has a very interesting story. And the interesting story I discovered in Balotra, they did a mistake print for a big brand I should not name, and that mistake print got popular. And that mistake print happened because that order was given in monsoon month, and this resist, if you apply in the monsoon, it will break because of the moisture content. So that has got broken, and that order was liked by the brand. So they gave a big order. Now winters came. Now how will you achieve the same result? So they printed with Dabu, and they collected the cloth of it डंडे से तोड़ के दाबू को. They did that Dabu print, and from there the Dabu print, the mistake print, become popular for the market. This is a story from Balotra where it evolved, and then everyone started copying it. I saw it being copied in Bagrur. I saw wherever who were doing block printing in Akola, anywhere, Pipad, everywhere they were doing that. The same mistake they kept doing it. So this is how market works. But if you see the people who has really won those prints, they will not accept it. The communities will not accept it at all. So the patronage is not there now. The real patronage, which used to come from the communities, the value that used to come from the communities, is not there in the market. That is the main reason that the shift has happened.
I mean, it's so similar to a story I also discovered during my fieldwork in Jaipur, which is about pink color in Jaipur, because it's known as Pink City. And so there's so much pressure on the governments to keep creating and recreating that pink. Of course, there are a lot of, little stories about how the pink came to be. And one thing was for sure that it was a wash. But what kind of wash? What was the nature of wash? And so some would, go back to Araish plaster and the process of that, which is very time consuming. But now we have annual, the financial year. We have to finish everything in that financial year. So a lot of bureaucrats would tell me while, they were telling me about how this pink needs to be done, the beautification of the entire city needs to be done in that color. So a brand was created called Jaipur Pink, only in 2000s, under the Vasundhara Raje government, when they kept scraping off layers after layers from Hawa Mahal to know the original pink. So I think and then I don't know whether they found the original or not, but the point is that a brand was created, Jaipur Pink, which is also there in Asian Paints and which is now used liberally all over the city. Leaving the organic behind, the actual pigments or whatever was used. So interestingly, this idea of something that is so rooted, coming back to that earlier question also, something that's rooted, something that has a history, something which is like a process, which craftsmen create. And then we shift it to present time with its own vagaries, with its own context and, its own compulsions like budgets, or it needs to be the order came during monsoon and so things did not go the way they had to go. So I was just wondering when, in your work also we see different motifs coming together. On the one hand, we see this folk art of women that you must have seen motifs from different villages. The crow or the kurja or the peacock. Peacock you were saying is from the wall art of Meena women. And you put it in contemporary design format, which I found really interesting. So I was wondering, how do you negotiate this difference? Like, on the one hand, you have quote unquote what we might call an authentic motif. Maybe we don't want to, we call it authentic, maybe it is not, we don't know. But an authentic motif, and then contemporaneizing that authentic motif to make it into art, which you do, your imagination as an artist. So how do you negotiate these differences?
See, I have never played with the motives because I am very strict. I am very conservative in when it comes to the motive. They have to as it is. They have to be in the same proportion. Even the proportion should not change. So what I have printed over there, it is in the exact proportion. It is in the exact shape and size and nature. What I have played is only the positioning. With what I am positioning the motif. For example, if you see, see the monkeys. The monkeys could have been painted like anything, but I positioned them with a chair, the aspiration, the political aspiration for kursi. So I have positioned them like that. Even in the print that you see further than another Odni print, Saddani print, which is from Bagru, from Jaipur only. So there also I used the map to tell the story of these printers. Two printers, one was Titanwala, another was Bholiwala. So if you go to, in that time, in 70s, 60s, 80s, you would have gone to this Badi Chaupad Hard Bazaar. And if you want a Odni, you would definitely go to the Bholiwala. He was such a famous guy. And for the Farad, you will definitely go to the Titanwala because he was such a famous guy. Now Titanwala flourished and Bholiwala's family is completely finished. Now those stories need to be told. And with that same, there's a whole layer of folklore that circulates around that, because this what the woman was wearing, she was also singing it at the same time. What Sanganir was famous for, Bagru was famous for, Kota was famous for, वहाँ का घुघरा, वहाँ की लुगड़ी, वहाँ की चुनरी और वहाँ का बंदेज. These are all there in the folklore. So that is there. So, but I have been very conservative while dealing with the motif, because one of my research, which is there, is that I have collected old wooden blocks from the block printing center, which closed down in last 60 to 90 years. I went around whole of Rajasthan. Today you see only 4 or 5 centers in Rajasthan which are still practicing. But I should say there were dozens of centers around Ajmer, Kota. There's Chipa Badod whole. There's a whole town called Chipa Badod, which is meant for Chipa. A big block printing was done for the tribal communities in Madhya Pradesh. So like that, I have documented some 50 block printing centers which closed down last 100 years. Now there, for me, the interest is the design repertoire, which is not documented. No one has documented the traditional designs. So just I am trying to build a catalog of that. Similarly, Badmir print, which is extinct. But in last 5-6 years, Ranamal has tried to revive that, because he was having those old blocks, because he was collecting blocks from the people who were living Badmir prints. So now that is a whole design repertoire again from Badmir, which needs to be documented. Similarly, I documented the Sangane, Bagru, and other places like that. So I think this is very important, that we need to be very sensible when we deal with the motif, because what happens, because these motifs are being manipulated by the screen printers, by the digital printers, and you know the recent controversy that happened with Sabyasachi collection, which was commissioned by H&M, and he did all that digital printing. So that episode ignited my mind to start working on the Sanganir, because no one could have gone and fixed him in the court case. No one would have filed a case for ICH, because no one had a documentation. No one has any authentic information what Sanganeri print is. It is there. If you go with the Multani Kharadi block carvers, they have a whole collection of what Sanganeri print was, but no one has ever worked with them. So we need to preserve these. And for that, a proper research is very much important.
You know,
So that Pithora painting issue was raised by us only because this JD Institute of Fashion Design, they had put them into trousers, shirts and everything. Now you need to understand that every horse of a Pithora is representative of some ancestral spirit. You can't put it like this. So we only raised the issue and then it was featured everywhere. They took it out from their website. But that gave a lesson because at the same time NID approached us. You want to work, see, please understand, this is not something that you can paint on your textile and you can use it anyhow. Huh? Yeah. So we do not sell Pithora from our museum shop. In Adivasi Academy, we do not sell a single Pithora painting. It should not be treated as a painting. I say it's a ritual art. It's not a painting, it's a ritual art. It is done for a particular ritual, it has meaning. It has to be put in a particular space by the particular community, by the particular Lakhara. Mathani Pachedi people, they were there on mask. During the COVID period, I saw this Mathani Pachedi done on mask. Very sad thing. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Wally, what we know as the essence of the art. Wally started wall painting, and that also with what? With rice powder. As the Bengalis do Alpona, same thing. Few days back, one of the renowned artists, he even went to Santa Fe to represent his form of art. He is using bright red in between the motifs. So I called him because I have worked with him in one of my assignments for curating traditional painting styles. I said, sir, ये क्या कर रहे हो? नहीं मैडम, market मांग रहा है. I said, market जो मांग रहा है, वो अगर हम सब देने लगे, तो art कैसे बचेगी? So this is a very pertinent question. What sir also was saying. Everyone involved, we need, as we are going to the villages, safeguarding. At the same time, we need to educate the people around also. अगर market जो मांग रहा है सभी बनाएंगे तो that won't survive, right? The tradition won't survive. Tradition has to survive. Thank you.
That brings me to this this sounds very different, sorry. This also brings me to the question, perhaps it'll be taken up in another session, which is that what would be a community which does art on a day-to-day basis, like let's say Meena women or the Ajrak printers, their relationship with the market is most of the times mediated, right? By let's say conservationists, documenters like yourself, sometimes the state and its expertise, so-called experts. So I was just wondering, how does the community really get represented, number one? And of course, there is more sensitive representation like we see in your exhibition where you bring a kind of multi-sensorium sense. You have folk songs and oral traditions apart from the visual exhibits, which is very, very interesting. But then there could also be very, very insensitive representations and meddling with what we think of as quote-unquote original art. So, but for some artists or some community who are languishing maybe in poverty, for them going to the market or access becomes important. So how do we, as let's say sensitive artists or conservators, make an economic, or what could be, a kind of viable option, which is a more practical question.
See the mistakes that has happened, I tell you a few case studies about this. The Madhubani, commercialization of Madhubani started with the famine, that's a whole narrative which is said. The Gaunt painting with the Bharat Bhavan Bhopal, And then the exploitation centers were all in Delhi, because there we were never able to represent these arts as the contemporary art galleries has represented them. There was not a single gallery, if we go back to 20 years ago, which was representing these folk arts, these ethnic arts, these rural arts with a respect actually. The artists were brought to craft museum, to this Suraj कौन सा मेला, सूरज कुंड मेला, दिल्ली हाट, and they were put on floor कि आप यहाँ बैठ के बनाइए, and they are paid as a labor rate कि आपका दिन का 200 रुपया मिलेगा. Still you get calls from them कि आपको why don't you negotiate with the artwork कि मेरा काम इतने का होगा तो I'll charge that work, but how they are paid as a labor actually. So I tell you very frankly, we actually treated them as laborers of art. That was the biggest mistake that we did. Any organization which is promoting these from Bombay to Delhi, they all treated like them. I have seen in front of my eyes how they have exploited them. Rate में कितना negotiation होता है. You do a negotiation with the art gallery, किसी art gallery के साथ negotiate करके देखो आप. You will not negotiate with them, but with the folk art, यार 1000 का 200 में दे दो मुझे. Like सब्जी मेला जैसे हम सब्जी खरीदते हैं ना, इस तरीके से. This is the exploitation that has happened. So we have not really valued and put them on a correct platform. Now coming to this worldly thing, I have seen original paintings gone in the villages deep in Maharashtra and how they was actually done, which was only an image of Mother Goddess, nothing more than. No these human figures and climbing trees and all those, nothing like that. But I appreciate one work which was done by Jivya Suma Mase. He totally came out from this tradition and he totally invented something new, which was totally contemporary. I can put him equal to Hussein. If we consider Hussein to be the top artist, I'll put him against with him. Very lately his works has been recognized abroad, not in India again, I tell you. And his works are worth in lakhs, crores now. You know, that was one fantastic painter from Pithora, from this worldly tradition, promoted by galleries like, I think Kemol patronized him in Bombay very early. That was the first gallery which has given space to worldly artists, Kemol, Keku Gandhi. Then I'm coming to that. And then if you come to Bhopal, Jangan Singh Sham, who was doing a labor work in Bharat Bhavan, Bhopal, he was picked up by J. Swaminathan. And he took a new height, a new fantasy, new imagination. And that is something fabulous. But if we see other 500 Gond artists who are really suffering now in Bhopal, they have all migrated from their villages just to find some work, some job, some work, because there are many museums, they get work in the museums. But yes, their art has still not get that price. Only very few. It was Jangan Singh Sham earlier, now it is Bhajju Sham, who is getting that kind of a respect and money, but others are not getting. Who? Acha, yeah. So this is little bit the representation is, and we are little biased, I tell you, when it comes to contemporary art and when it comes to the rural arts, we are totally biased. We have not respect, but like Japan has represented Madhubani so well. They have made a whole museum for it. Germany has respected them so well. They get so many invitations to go abroad. They are always there. But why we didn't respected them? So this is because we look towards the West and West is looking towards these artists. That is something reverse that's happening. आप माइक लीजिए.
Yeah, it's working. Last few years with one of the government entities, when the festival was planned, they said कि वो लोग train में नहीं आ सकते. I said क्यों भाई? Train में क्यों आएंगे? Because government of India has a policy कि overnight journey if it is, then they have to be given flights. अभी लद्दाख से कोई आर्टिस्ट आ रहा है, वो ट्रेन में आएगा 4 दिन में, आके यहाँ पे 7 दिन काम करेगा. He'll need to relax for 2 days. फिर ये रोगन के लिए जब्बर आया हुआ था. द डायरेक्टर ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट इज टेलिंग मी, मैडम इनको क्यों लाए आप, ये तो कुछ ऐसा खास काम दिखा भी नहीं पाया. एंड ही क्लेम्स टू बी साहित्यिक, ये वो सब कुछ. आई सेड सर आपसे तो ये उम्मीद नहीं थी. ये रचना के लिए आप जो लिखते हो, इसके लिए आपको कितनी दिन सोचनी पड़ती है, कितना टाइम लगता है. ये तो ऐसा नहीं कि आया बैठा और बना के चला गया. इसकी प्रोसेस मालूम है आपको कितना लगता है. सो दिस अंडरस्टैंडिंग, दिस अवेयरनेस हैज़ टू बी एट एवरी लेवल. Then only we can achieve what we are targeting to achieve.
Yeah, and I mean, with all the global attention on heritage and, you know, our crafts, perhaps a more sensitive understanding is still not there, as I gather from your conversations. Dr. Meena, perhaps would you like to take us through some slides and talk about it a little before we kind of conclude?
Slides. So how much time is left? 10 minutes? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this painting that you see here is in the center. What you see is a Naika from a Chitrashala of Bundi actually. She's in the same posture there, but she's not holding a sling. Over here she's given a sling, जिसको हम गोफन कहते हैं. It is used to fly away birds in the fields. And the chilies are Mathania chilies, very famous. These are internationally famous chilies, but I have really seen these Mathania chili fields around Jodhpur when I was working for this museum. So that time, we see that the women are actually involved in this whole business of post-harvest, what you see in the fields. No, it is not a man's job, it is always a woman's job to do these things. So I just tried to put that Bundi Naika into Mathania chilies. So what I was telling you, my positioning of the subjects makes the work interesting. I do not manipulate the motives. Next. Similarly, over here, this banana, and we have this Rajasthan, whole of North India, we offer, उसको केला खिलाओ, खाना खिलाओ, चिड़ियाओं को चुगा डालो. We have this tradition, very popular monkey. उससे कुछ दान दोगे तो कुछ पुण्य मिलेगा उससे जो. So this is from that, but actually it relates to a very interesting, funny episode that comes from Kota. We have an art gallery which is run by Rajasthan Literature Academy. And we have a very sensitive politician there who takes care of this gallery, and he always gives funds to PWD to repair and paint it. But just in front of the gallery, these city peoples come with the loads of bananas in scooters, motorcycles, or this loading vans. And they put these bananas all around the space, and they spoils the space, and these monkeys just sits on the gallery walls, and they spoil the walls every year. And this minister pulls out money to get it again painted. So he made a statement that came in the paper कि गैलरी को कलाकारों से ज़्यादा बंदर इस्तेमाल करते हैं. So it is out of that statement this painting got inspired. He is not aware of this, that I did a painting like this, but yeah, this is that. But yeah, it represents other interpretations also. But yeah, it came from that event here. Next. So can you go back? So what you see in this is a collaborative work that I do with the miniature artists of Kota, Wasim and Lukman, two senior painters. So bananas are screen printed, and they are all modern motifs, miniature motifs, and the monkey has been painted by the miniature artist, proper pigment colors, natural stone colors. Yeah. Same is this motif is my inspiration from childhood days, Gulab Chhap Matches, from where I think I started my art actually by tracing it, not by drawing it, by just tracing it. So that still haunts me. So this was a next. So it's a pair. Actually, this painting was a Kanta Laga. It was a title, and over here it is a second version of it. The first version was like this: that the woman is pricking a thorn from her feet, and that Naika is again from the Bundi Chitrashala. There, this is folded, and she's. So you see the labor work that the woman goes, because I come from the rural background and I see the women are always there working very hard, and the man is holding a flower. He's just smiling and enjoying the the smell of the rose, while the woman is so much doing such hard work that the thorn of the rose has pricked her, and then she's pulling out the thorn. So it was just that comment on this gender relationship. So yeah, next. This is a Baramasa series which I have represented through birds, through nature actually. How though the Baramasa is popularly represented by the Naikas and Nayaks, their relationship, emotions, their representation. And the Ragragnis has also represented Baramasa like that. But I think nature responds more immediately as compared to human beings. When any natural changes happen, it's the birds, animals, insects which responds immediately as compared to human beings. So I have did this whole series in respect to in context to birds, some animals also. So these are, can you show next? Previous, sorry. The previous is a Saras crane. पीछे जाएंगे जरा पीछे वाला. This is Saras crane generally, and just in the winters we get to see them. They call also, so you can see they are making calls. So that's a mating season, which is winters generally. And then the lotus are there in the pond. So just as before Diwali, you'll see this in Rajasthan, the lotus coming out from the pond. So it's that season just before Diwali. That's the season. Next. These are monkeys again. Again the winter time only, when they just basking or in the sun. Yeah. Next. Parrots, mostly during the crop harvest, we see a lot of parrots in the time of March, April. It is that period. And the particular trees has also been painted when they flower. So March, April is the flowering for this Ashoka tree that I have painted there. So the trees has also been interpreted according to seasons. Next. I come from this area, Ranthambore, and it's my favorite subject. So the tigers from Ranthambore, mostly the tourist season, because that is when people get to see tigers. Next. The crows, I generally represent them with the summer months actually, because there are few episodes when I have seen many crows on the streets, barren streets in some of the old towns, just like Shekhawati's only. So that comes from that imagination placed in and the trees that you see, the white trees, it's a print, it's a silkscreen print, and all these trees has been painted in Kota miniature. It's not from any other miniature school. These trees are exactly how they have been done in Kota Bundi miniatures. Yeah. Next. Peacock, monsoon. Next. This series evolved from this Indus Valley site which is in Kalibanga, Hanumangarh. So I've been to this site. So can you show next work? So this inspired me, this work of a thirsty crow, the story, the fable that we have read in our school days. So I've seen this site when it was being excavated and these things were taken out, and later the museum came up. So those terracotta articles has always inspired, the design has always inspired me. And I studied these terracotta pieces which has the same designs which is similar to what the Meena women are doing, the peacocks and the texture that they fill in the pottery. It's exactly same texture. So I've done a chapter also just comparing the designs from Indus Valley civilization with the Meena painting. So it is from that side. Yeah, next. Banana eaters again, the monkeys, consumerism, you can say. It's a political work again. Next one. This is also similar, aspiration for kursi. Everyone wants that. Elections are coming now, so you can understand this context. Next. So this is a series which is my journey to Badmer from Kota to study this textile ajrak that I was talking about. But when you go to, if suppose I am traveling to Badmer, it's not only the ajrak that will remain in my mind, but there were hundreds of things that will come when I pass through different terrains, through different cultural regions actually. If I'm going from Haruti to this Dhat, Badmer is Dhat actually. So there are layers of various cultural zones, of various cultural practices, various things. So in these paintings you will see, like this is a Kurja bird which is there. Definitely you'll get to see them if you go during the winters. You can see them across many water bodies in Rajasthan towards the desert, towards West Rajasthan. Next. And here you can see the processes I was talking about, the Azrak processes from printing to final, how you achieve a piece of Azrak. So Kumbh is a pre-process before printing. You have to treat the grey cloth, you have to de-starch it, and you have to make it ready so that it absorbs the color. So that's a Kumbh process, which is a steaming process of the, and then similarly there is a Saj, Kasano, Kiryano. Kiryana is similar to what you call Dabu in Bagru. So you can see, in Bagru it's called Dabu, there it's called Kiryana. It's a mud resist only. है ना? Kirchi, cut, dibri, cut, जिसको हम शाही कहते हैं, बगरू में शाही. It is called cut in this language there. Dibri, khad is printing with begar. जहाँ बगरू में बेगर कहते हैं, वहाँ खड़ कहते हैं उसको. बदावा, बिछलना, घाना, then मीनाकारी, तपानो को हम बिछलना कहते हैं यहाँ पर बगरू में, वहाँ तपाना कहते हैं उसको. So see how the terminology, it's because the block printing technique is almost similar kind, but yeah, there's big varieties within that also. So I've tried to put those words so that people can just understand that this whole language that exists in that tradition. The language defines the craft somewhere, so that need to be understood. Yeah. Next. Then the folklore, definitely that comes in. So if I see a Kurza word, definitely this popular song on Kurza will come to my mind. So that I have represented here. And then at the bottom you can see the motifs of Azrak overprinted on the map. The map is actually a route from Kota to Badbe. That's a route. It will come in another work. Next. Yeah. Another folklore related to the crow now over here. Yeah. Next. This is a popular motif, this Ginni of Azrak. And then there is a text which is not clearly visible, but that's a route that I take from Kota to Badme. So all the small towns and cities that comes into, I put that also. So it's the mapping of those places. Next. This is a popular Ishq page motif which is considered to be worn by the young man. So that, and then the map of Badmer is there. Next. So this is a this is a print from Odni, which was popular being printed by Bholiala with a very special block where the designs are not printed but the background is printed. So in the Odni, the red Odnis are popular from Rajasthan. They mostly, if they are in block print. If they are in Thailand, then they can have different colors. But if it is block, then red Odnis or maroon Odnis were worn by the women. So this making of this block is a very tedious process. And similarly the printing, because there has to be no gap also. And for this Bholiala, Chipa was very popular. Now there is no one left in the family to continue this tradition. So, but I have this piece with me. This piece belongs to my mother-in-law. It is in her collection. And there I have seen the same seal printed on the backside of the cloth. And then I went into the Purani Basti and all those places to find out this person, where is the family, what it is, still doing it. And we found that they have completely stopped. And they have sold away their blocks also. But I have a piece from Bholiala. I collected a block which belongs to him. I have same block which was printed, which was used at that time. Yeah, next. Suraj Nayan Titanwala became very popular. His business flourished, unlike Bholiala, which completely finished, because he was picked up by Anokhi, and Anokhi patronized him. Then he got big orders from Japan, from Hiroko Iwatate. So he flourished, and now he has done a museum of his own, which is a fantastic example of an artist doing a museum on block prints in Bagru. So it is his story, and the skirt is again from my mother-in-law. So the two pieces that you see here are worn by the Meena community. Motif is called Gobika Fool. So I have used that motif over here. And at the bottom is again the printing process. For example, if you compare this printing process with the Azrak printing process, you will find entirely a different terminology which is used, because it is called Jamardi. Like Azrak over there, this Fadad printing is called Jamardi because it goes through more than 15 processes. When you get such kind of a result where the background is dark blue, it is greenish blue. So there are multiple dips of indigo that goes into it. So it's a very typical, and it is registered multiple times. So it's a very typical textile, but now only Suraj Nayan Titanwala, one family is left. which is still doing it. And the family migrated from Jaipur. You can see the place which is Purani Basti behind City Palace. Now they are in Bagru. They migrated out of the city and they settled in Bagru when their business flourished. Yeah. This is old map of Jaipur, and Jaipur has a history that it patronized 36 karkhanas, 36 different crafts. So I'm mapping these communities in this old city. So I painted, if you go and see the original work, the street are painted in gold because the Jaipur state generated revenue out of these crafts. They collected taxes because when the cloth used to come in Jaipur market, it was printed with their seal. And they collect a tax only that the cloth or anything was allowed to be sold in the market. Yeah. These are some old photographs, so taken by Elizabeth Simpson, a lady who came in 1960s to document Indian Rajasthan textile and pagdis and all these. So I use her photographs. She documented them 40, 50, 60 years ago, and I am documenting their third generation now of the same families. So I pulled those photographs here in this exhibition. Yeah. Next. So these are all photographs by Elizabeth Simpson. Yeah. Khatam. And there you can see small, these QR codes are there. They relates to the songs related to these craft or these textiles. So you can aim your mobile and you can see this, listen to these songs also.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meena. I think this is absolutely fascinating and the exhibition is right here. So I now, invite all the audience and listeners to go and see the exhibition for them by themselves. Thank you so much for exploring this theme with us and for sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.